Let's turn the mic on. Hey gang, how you doing? Welcome to the Twilight Network. My name's Liam. Uh, we are just having a small issue with cameras at the moment. G'day, Rita Chic. How you doing? I do apologise for this technical hiccup. Alright. Registering that. Video capture device. Settings. Here we go. Oh, okay, we've jumped about. Okay, OBS has figured itself out. Welcome everyone to the Twilight Network. My name's Liam. It's wonderful to be here with you as we go through a bit of homebrew related to Mummy the Cursed, and we're going to be playing around a little bit with what Mummy does and how we can best use it in a story, how we can play around with it. Pop out chat. There we go. Alright. Let's just move this to here so I can actually look at you. As always, coming from the Northern Midlands, paying respect to Aboriginal elders, past, present, and future here in Tasmania. Coming to you on Good Friday here in Tassie. So I hope your Good Fridays are going well, as it is a sacred time for my religion. I am just going to light a little bit of incense because I want to do that. If it actually wants to light. There we go. Hopefully that just continues burning through the stream. Today, get that out of my way. Today we are playing around with Mummy the Curse once again. Playing with antagonist creation. How I personally go through antagonist creation and ideas that you might have for antagonist creation for your merit of mummies. The player group, whatever you find best in this regard. So, let's crack in. And I'll just adjust my view so I can actually, talk to people well, see people well, do all that jazz. How you going today, chat? And my cat has started to tear up the carpet at the door. Love that for me. switch over. So we're going to be playing around with a few things today. G'day, Goblin Cave TV. Yeah, it's I'm glad that you enjoy the sound of the Aussie voice coming through. That kind of Australiana is what I'm kind of hoping to keep up with in this regard as we talk through Mummy the Curse and the antagonists that you can build for it, the sort of things that you can play around with. If you've been around for the past month or so, 2 months now, you may have stumbled upon a previous Twilight Network where I talked about building Imhotep from the Mummy. We may revisit that a little bit for this one, but the main thing we're doing is just building up a set of antagonists that can interact with our player group, provided we're playing the Mummy the Curse, or if you want to throw in these antagonist styles for things like Mage the Awakening or Werewolf the Forsaken. Those sorts of things play really well into some of the styles that Mummy can really bring up. Now, let's jump to the introduction. Mummy's key themes are memory. We talked about that a little bit last week. And feel free to interrupt if you're listening in. Feel free to kind of play around with what's going on. This is, like all tables should be, a collaborative situation. I'm just the one who has access to the writing materials. You guys in chat, you're a part of this, I would like to think. So, with Mummy, we've been talking about how that has a few themes that play really well into the modern day, particularly if you're like me, you're a bit paler than most. So the theme of the antagonists that we're going to build for our merit, we're going to play around with this overall chronicle idea of memory, this key theme of Mummy. And the mood of the game is that of discovery. Memory and discovery make up these key themes. So the theme that we want for our antagonists is one that plays into the negative aspects of that. So negative aspects of memory are things like reveling in the indignities of the past and considering them a good thing. Or loss of memory. One of the key themes that I've talked about a couple of times here is the theme of colonization that does pop up through Mummy, where you are playing as if you are agents of a former colonial empire that has gone away and left everything behind. And so that I think is the theme that I would like in these for this style of play, where we ask the question, okay, what is colonialism? What is this theme that we're talking about? What is this idea? How do we interact with it? And what is going on with it? Just adjust my everything. Doop, 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 doop. So, theme, colonialism. Now, this is the theme of the antagonist. As you can see a bit further below, we're mostly focusing on this cultic antagonist. An antagonist that is not just an individual, but an organization. So, what is the mood of this thing? Is the mood similar to Mummy? Is it discovery, bringing back something that was lost? Is the mood of the game something else? I don't know. I'm going to leave that with you guys. If any of you have any ideas, throw it into chat. We'll play around with it. Alright. Now, we're also going to play around with this idea of there being a new judge. A judge specifically tying itself to this cult and to the mummy that the cult has on offer. So there are a few questions we have to ask. We don't necessarily have to ask what is a judge. The book answers that for us. But what we do have to ask about the judges of Duat is, what do they judge? What does this entity hold domain over, to use a vampire term? What is this thing's chorus, to use a werewolf spirit term? What is this thing judging? Now, we are wanting this to be an antagonistic entity. Judges are identified as antagonistic in the book in some ways. So when we're asking what do they judge, and it's tied to this theme of colonialism, we do have to step a little bit carefully here, because, you know, a bad take from the 90s maybe could have been, oh, they judge the inferior races, they judge inferior cultures, that sort of thing. We don't want to do that. But we do want them to have some sort of antagonistic element to their judgment. So, what do they judge? Maybe they judge the failure of empire, the failure to establish empires, the failure to maintain empires. They are pro-empire judges. Most judges are. They are pro the empire of Irem returning to the world. In this case, this judge, with this particular cult, is trying to recapture that element of Irem. They're trying to rebuild what was lost. And so maybe the mood of these antagonists is that of rebuilders or reclaimers. Something we may traditionally see in that of conservative politics is this desire to rebuild the glory days of the old world. This is that cult. Now, if you fall into that spectrum, I'm not trying to say anything bad about you personally, I'm just trying to say this is the most negative element of that. Now, judges have an appearance, as we read from Kaibet, the Eater of Shadows. They are a night dark terror, awful grandeur, stark against the rasping sands of Duat's wasteland. The monstrous jaws of the judge's 3 heads rend the flesh and skin from reality. For each mouth a tide of hot ash drools, stirring to a billowing storm of smoke when the beast roars or speaks. Well, that's a little spooky. Okay. So this is the appearance of the Eater of Shadows, the first judge mentioned in the core book. This judge is not going to appear like that. However, what they could appear as is a throne or a crown, symbol of authority, standing over vast tracts of land, and standing on those that it's conquered. This is the judge. It can take, whilst Kobit has very clear imagery in that it is canine, it is this howling storm. It is a very dreamlike imagery. It is something that consumes shadows. In this case, this is a creature a judge that stands as the conqueror. It stands as the leader. It stands as the being that oversees everything. So, in Australian context, we may think of a Queen Elizabeth sort of figure, this sort of English nobility and English royalty. This judge doesn't appear like that. They appear as Egyptian royalty. Their throne, not standing on the sandstone of great monuments to their glory, but standing on the bones of all that have been judged as unworthy, and all those who have failed to work for the empire, all those who have fallen beneath the weight of this judge. I like that. I think that can work really well as an antagonist to Mummy if we're playing it in, I'm assuming, an Australian context. So I'll just put up here, setting. Australia. If I can spell. If I can spell. Yes. And this could be in any of the states of Australia. I'm in Tassie. I'm thinking, probably the northern portion of Tassie where this sort of being interacts the most. Yeah. Who do they judge? This is an interesting place to be. This question of this judge is one that if you were homebrewing, you would want to handle delicately. Because if they judge the failure of an empire, who do they judge? Well, they judge those who bring about democracy, those who are rebels to the empire, those who violate the rules of the empire, those who undo the great work that is empire. That could easily, if you are indelicate in using this sort of context, using this sort of setting, using this sort of theme, that could easily turn around to being the native people, for example. You don't want that. We don't want that. It's a bad look for anyone. It's especially a bad look if you're of my complexion. It's a bad look if you're sitting in a space where you are dealing with these heavy topics, and they're an important part of the story. You generally, what I have found in trying to deal with these topics, is you don't want them dealt with directly. Okay, you want to look at how colonialism affected the convicts in the case of Australia as they came out. So, who does this judge oversee, and who do they judge? The rebels of the empire, traitors, those who break their oaths to their king. This does have some intersection with some of the other judges. Let's see. Wielders of magic. The penitents you could argue that the religious complex is one that really influenced the political complex, and that's completely true. In the ancient world, there was not this distinction between religious and political. They were deeply interwoven. The judge has that perspective. Liars, those who feed on falsehood. So Nabar is another judge that could interact with this. Power seekers, that sort of thing. So Nehebka, the one who unifies, and Nabar are two potential other judges that could interact with this antagonistic group, and could be judges that you give to your player group as ones who are going, someone is stepping on our toes, we want you to stop that. You as the merit, go out, deal with this cult's problem. How are they worshipped? It's very simple. This judge is worshipped by rebuilding and recovering Irem. Irem is the ancient homeland of the mummies, if you haven't read the book. It is the most ancient of empires of Egypt. It is supposed to have taken place before the Middle Kingdom, before this unification happens. It is a world ruled by sorcerers and monsters and life-binding magic and the mummies. Now, the reason we aren't talking too much about mummies themselves is because I've done that before, but also we talk a little bit about the mummy below and how that's going to affect the game. Alright, so that's your judge. Should give them an epitaph. But if anybody's about and watching, I'll just boot this up and flick it over here. If anybody wants to throw into chat any ideas for the name or the epitaph of this judge, do so. Like I said, you guys are a part of this. Join in. Okay, so this judge has a cult dedicated to it, to what it believes, to what it wants. So this judge's cult is sorry, I'm just boosting that so that no worries, Red Sheik. Thank you for saying so, though. I appreciate the interaction. So this group is antagonistic in the sense that it is... Ergo Proximus, the Architect of Empires. I love it. I don't know how that would be in Ancient Egyptian. I don't speak Ancient Egyptian. However, I do have a knowledge of Hebrew. So I'm just going to borrow straight from that and bastardize a language. Malachot, the Architect of Empires. So that word, malach, is biblical Hebrew for king. And that is roughly dominion as a word. So the dominion, the Architect of Empires, they judge the failures of empire. Not doing this in a positive sense, doing this in a very negative sense of you cause what I love to fail. A symbol of authority. Yeah, that's right. Thanks very much, gang. Alright, so these guys have a cult. This guy has a cult that is running about doing his dirty work in the world. They are going to be the key antagonists for this merit, the group of mummies, and it is going to be a sorceress cult that is overseen by one very key immortal that has popped up time and time again in the life cycle of the cult and has maintained it in some way, whilst the sorcerers, die off, overstretch, and that sort of thing. Last homebrew session, we went into a little bit of cult creation, using Imhotep from The Mummy as the basis. I think you should be able to find it as one of the previous streams on the Onyx Path channel. I'm not entirely sure, but I've been living my life. So we're not going to do a full cult creation. That would just take too much time. And cult creation is always done from the perspective of the mummy. The mummy for this cult is going to be the last thing we deal with because it is not awake. It is not arisen to fight for this cult. So we do the cult first, then the key individuals, then the immortal, and then we'll look at some aspects of the mummy if we have time. So there are 3 archetypes of cults: conspiracies, which are your typical secret organization; enterprises, which are your capitalist secret organization; and tribes, which are, as they say, rigid, hierarchical, and directly controlled by the mummy. They are... Each one is concerned with facilitating the goal of, in this case, the judge, in a particular way. Conspiracies are about integrating into the world and digging into the world and undergirding a whole heap of infrastructure to let their will be done. Enterprises are enterprises. They're about organizing organizations themselves. For this cult, however, I think tribe, because tribes come across as religious. Tribes stretch the limits of legality in their in-group. They are not a negative group sort of thing. It is just they are those who facilitate their group. In this case, this cult, the type is tribal. Doctrines. There are 3 doctrines for the cult, which are just things that it obeys. So first doctrine is the judge's doctrine, which is to rebuild RM. We work to rebuild RM. Second, it's another uniting idea. We will defeat those who would blaspheme against Irem. Wanting to keep to that that sort of hyper religious language for these guys. Wanting that really this scary fanaticism that is associated with any sort of cult. In this case, we've kind of... Ooh. Ergo Proximus, you are on fire today. Please make sure you have a cookie on me. We will root out those who would weaken an empire. I'm just going to change that a little, because it's not any empire. It is the Empire of Irem. But that is just, yeah. Virtue and Vice are simple mortal things. If you have the blue book for 2E, you'll be able to find Virtue and Vice. And they are not like a Ghost's Virtue and Vice. They are not like a Hobgoblin or anything like that, where they're kind of bastardized, where something that we see as negative, they would see as positive. These are still humans. So the vice of this group is Fanaticism. Fanaticism. Jeez. I can do Hebrew today, I cannot do English. Tiny little trash fire. Their virtue... Normally you'd want something like faith if you were building a character, but this is not a character, this is an antagonist setting. So you're wanting something that plays off fanaticism, that is beneficial in some way. And something charity, actually. Something that, so in this case, charity is something that still benefits people. It still facilitates the growth of the empire, but it is not something that we would associate with true religious fanaticism. There's always this edge of fanaticism where we give up nothing. We do not give in to the will of you outsiders. We do not give in to the will of you blasphemers. However, for this cult, they can be convinced through their charity to care for those who do not adhere to the truth. Now, for Mummy, cults get access, instead of the mystery cult initiation, they get access to a specific rule set, which should be on screen now. Pardon me. Which is Scorpion Cult Initiation. This effectively functions as status within the cultic group. It also functions as the generic benefits of Mystery Cult Initiation do. So, each dot gives a specific mechanical bonus. Don't care too much. However, most initiates in this cult gain a specialty in Iremites religion over the Iremite bureaucracy. Simply because we've identified that this group is initiation. There we go. Sorry, mate. Just cannot spell today. We've identified that this cult is religiously fervent. They are focused on something. So getting a bureaucratic specialty would be unusual for them. Everything else is pretty standard, being immune to Sibaris, which is the understanding that a mummy is unnatural. It is similar to Promethean Disquiet in that sense. Sibaris is a powerful tool in the mummy's arsenal. It inflicts a negative condition upon those who would have it. And yeah, it is a very powerful tool. A powerful defensive tool. Alright, so that's the Scorpion Cult initiation. Done, dusted. We move on. Now, we're going to get into some of the more, what I think are interesting elements of Mummy. So, sucks to be you if you don't. And that is sorcerers. Sorcerers are those who have specialized in gathering the rights and, sorry, bashing that about, gathering the rights, gathering the understanding, and gathering the necessary tools to call upon ancient sorceries. These come in two sorts. Open rights, which anybody can do. These are things like abjuration or warding, which anyone can do. If you have the blue book, it pops up just after ghosts, I think. Provided you have the integrity stat, you can abjure ghosts from a location, you can ward ghosts against a location, you can perform exorcisms against ghosts and spirits and that sort of thing. These sorts of open rights are dictated, are written down here. Sorcerers as cults, that's what we're playing with. Provided you don't have a supernatural template, you can just do these open rights. They are open practices in that sense. These are the religious ideas that these sorcerers really latch onto. These include things like creating vestiges, which bind the sechem of an object into something important, into a relic, or awakening a mummy, performing the call, awakening one of the arisen. These should require a little bit of sorceress knowledge. Yep, that's right. And ritual. There's a specific merit which I believe is ritual sorcery. It's been a big month. I'm sorry, I'm not fully over Mummy. So these open rights that would be common to this group are creating vestiges, and warding of ephemeral entities. These are just and vestige creation. These are important things for this cult because each one of them shows. Just can't read. Shows this blessing from the judge in some way. If you can protect yourself from the ephemeral entities of an ancient land, you are protecting your empire. If you can create vestiges, you are showing that you are blessed by the will of this judge. You are a part of this. You are the master of this empire, and you should be respected. Vestige creation is pretty simple. You just have to find the right object, imprint a memory onto that object, seal the vestige, which does require a roll, but that is very flexible. And we're going to make a vestige right now. Vestiges are pretty simple relics. Well, they're not relics, they're vessels. They are objects that contain Sechem, this power of life. So, vestiges have ratings. they are a specific object. They do have a virtue and vice, which we're just, for the sake of simplicity, going to keep as the cults. This vestige we're building is the key thing the cult gathers around and worships. Charity. So it is going to be a talisman of the Pharaoh. Hey, I spelled that right. It has resonance. And it has particular powers. Here we go. Now, vessels give a selection of powers and a selection of curses related to their use. So, there are some base ideas here, but we're going to play around with this. Power. What sort of power do we want, gang? This is... Cheers, Regishik. Yes, I will try to have fun now you're here. So, I'm feeling like this vestige should have some level of influence on the listener at base. So, or rather, this is not just used by someone, this is used by someone to benefit another person. The invocation goes out into other individuals. And what I think that should be is a bonus to the skill rating. Skill is invoked when the... Ooh. No. No. What have I done? Yep. So, yeah, this is based on the virtue of the vestige. Sorry, I was reading the wrong rules. I haven't fully built this before. So a vestige's power is based on its virtue. You're giving away something to people. Curse is based on its vice. So fanaticism. The Talisman of the Pharaoh. Fanaticism. Okay. If you are convinced, or rather if you are swayed from the goal set at invocation, you gain berserk condition. The rating of this is probably just 3, just because of the bonus that it's giving, and the berserk condition is particularly brutal. And that is any sort of swaying from the goal. So if you stop to get food when you're supposed to be going out to raid someone else's place, you gain the berserk condition. This sort of brutality of this vestige is something that should make those who adhere to it additionally powerful. But if you fail to follow the will of the judge, you will be punished. Thanks, Ergo Proximus. Have a good one, mate. Range and time, lasts a scene, as most powers do. And it can influence other people. So I think this is a reasonably simple and slightly flawed. Like, you may want to step off from the berserk condition, you may want to swap it around for some other negative condition that displays anger, maybe even obsessed. Actually, that's a much better one. Gain the obsessed condition related to the goal you're trying to achieve. Pretty simple. Obsessed denies 10 again on specific rolls, but grants. But it does grant. Does it grant 9 again? Whatever. It denies 10 again, and that's the main thing. You're wanting to punish the situation. You may add additional elements to this curse, like gain the obsessed condition related to the goal you're trying to achieve, and some other element to this curse. No idea, depends on what you want to do. Now, 272. This is where we're hitting closed rites. Closed rites are things that only the sorceress cult can engage with. And this is probably where we're going to start wrapping it up. Design that relic. With a few simple things. These rites are very simplistic, but let's figure out a way to quickly do one. Da, 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 da. I'm not sure where to go with closed rights. Just going to be honest. Don't know what to do. I thought I'd read this clearly. I haven't read it clearly enough. So I'm just going to bounce on. Sorry if you were after professionalism. I'm not here to deliver that. We will, however, jump to the leader of this cult, an immortal. The immortals come in 4 basic flavors. that if you're used to the Immortals book from Chronicles of Darkness first edition, you'll be used to these. They are the blood bathers, those who bathe in the blood of others so that they can maintain their immortality. We probably don't want them for this one. Body thieves who leapfrog their way across body after body after body after body through time and space. Eternals who are like liches in D&D. They bind their life force into a specific object, and they seek to protect that at all costs. Then there are the reborn, or reborn, who continually reincarnate themselves time after time after time. For this cult, I think we want the cultists to be led by an Eternal. Because what this does is it lets the Eternal be a reasonably sizable threat to the group, because they can't be put down. They can't be killed. You have to either work with them, dismantle their assets, or convince them otherwise. And maybe none of that will work. This Eternal's anchor, what is their the thing that they are protecting? What is their item? That they've bound the soul into. We would want some sort of Egyptian themed element. So let's borrow from the mummy again. It's this time the mummy returns a bracelet of showing the judge, or depicting the judge. We're not going to do too much there, but you start to see how this immortal, just by their devotion, you should be able to see that this immortal is a problem for any mummy. They've got the assets. They're always awake. They can always come back unless you can break that one item, which you don't know where it is. It may be on this Eternal. It may not be. It may be with someone they love. It may be with someone that they know it's going to be protected. It may be in a secret vault in Switzerland or somewhere like that. You just don't know as the party. So there's this interesting little puzzle encounter of trying to find it. As we start to wrap up, we're just going to work on the mummy that this cult is actually based around and works through. This mummy has some particular decree that has bound it and has allowed it to impose pillars, these powerful, it's like essence, the fuel stat of the mummy into these creatures, into their little cultists. So, you have the Hashem, the Deseret, which are, trying to remember, the Hashem are the jackal-headed here we go. Jackal-headed guardians and wise occultists. Deseret are the falcons, they're ambitious visionaries. Keru are passionate heralds and vital thrill-seekers. Nezrem are sentinels and tireless devotees. And Usheb are cunning tacticians and manipulators. I think we're going to stick with Nezrem. So the decree is Nezrem, which gives the mummy the ability to imbue into their followers the pillar of Ub, this desire to outlast and outlive and to rebuild, to establish something that will go on forever and ever and ever, to establish an empire. We're going to start wrapping up now. If you guys have anything else you want to throw into chat, I would love to hear it. We've still got a few minutes. I'm going to start winding down and getting us ready to jump over to the Critical Role channel. Because no one else, I believe, is online at this point, and yeah, you can see how other people do their games and do that sort of thing. It's alright. Thanks, Catjalinks. Raid Critical Role. Yep, I think that works. This is a pigeon. I know I should know what that means, but I am stupid. Oh, this is a pigeon. Yes, hello. Hello. That's thrown me completely. What was I doing? I was doing shutdown. That's what I was doing. All right. I hope you all stay well. Hope you all stay happy. And to quote Bill and Ted, be excellent to each other. Where? Schedule. Who's on next? Mage the Awakening game is on tomorrow. Occultist Anonymous. They do a good job, so I would